A test for the rule of law. Donald Trump has become only the third U.S. president to undergo a trial in the Senate after being impeached by the House of Representatives. Impeachment prosecutors have urged the Senate to choose the country over the party. Regardless of whether Trump is found guilty or acquitted as expected, this is a defining moment for America and the rule of law.
Even though I've gone through this before, for all of us, the solemnity, the gravity of the moment in our history hits you square in the back when you take that oath. A separate oath designed by the Senate only for senators who will serve on a court of impeachment.
On the opening day of the trial, Republicans blocked all the 11 amendments proposed by the Democratic leader Chuck Schumer to subpoena documents and witnesses, including White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney and former National Security Advisor John Bolton. Democrats say the impeachment rules from Republican leader Mitch McConnell will ensure a rigged trial for the president.
For anyone who says, oh, this isn't serious or this is done all the time, no way. This president, in his abuse of power, is unfortunately unique.
This is not a process for a fair trial. This is the process for a rigged trial. This is the process if you do not want the American people to see the evidence. This is a process you use if you want to, hand in hand, working in concert with the president, allow the president to continue to obstruct the Congress and deny the truth to the American people.
Senate Democrats vow they won't stop pushing for witnesses and documents in the trial, believing the public is on their side. President Trump has dismissed the whole process as a partisan witch hunt. Trump blasted the proceedings from afar, joking that he would confront Democrats by coming to sit right in the front row and stare at their corrupt faces.
I'd love to go. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be beautiful? I don't know. I'd sort of love sit right in the front row and stare at their corrupt faces. I'd love to do it. I don't know. Don't keep talking because you may convince me to do it.
What are the implications for the office of the presidency and the country as a whole?
The impeachment is very political by its nature, and for many people, whether they like Trump or not, this offense is not that egregious. So I think the Democrats have had a hard time building a broad base of support beyond their party for the impeachment process, and it's not like us in the Senate. And it may harm the Democrats in the upcoming 2020 election and may help Trump's re-election case.
The trial is not just a solemn moment of Trump and his presidency, but is a grave test for the Senate itself. If the upper chamber votes along party lines and acquits Trump, it will set a very dangerous precedent, one that puts a president above the law. The idea that a president can abuse his power and get away with it will erode the whole system of checks and balances designed to prevent tyranny in executive authority. A lawless presidential legitimacy will follow. While the impeachment case is presented before the 100 senators acting as the judge and jury, the ultimate verdict will be handed down by American voters when they head to polls later this year. There are 2 articles of impeachment against Trump.
The truth from coming out. And so I do think that by structuring the trial this way, it furthers our case that what's going on here really is a cover-up of evidence to the American people.
Trump's defense team argues the charges against the president are politically motivated, designed to hurt his re-election chances. The first impeachment article says Trump abused the powers of the presidency to get Ukraine to intervene in the 2020 presidential election. Trump did this by pressuring Ukraine to dig dirt on his political rivals and by withholding aid to Ukraine if it did not cooperate. The first article concludes that this makes Trump a threat to U.S. national security if he remains in office. Is Trump a threat to national security?
Well, I think he's a threat in other ways. For instance, I think it was very dangerous, the drone strike that targeted Mr. Suleiman in Baghdad, and that's inflamed tensions with Iran and could provoke a war with Iran. So I think that's very dangerous for world security and also for U.S. national security if they're, inflaming countries and arousing opposition to the United States. So I would argue that that act was very egregious and makes Trump and his administration very threatening because they presented no evidence that Suleiman committed any crimes.
President Trump has denied using U.S. military aid as a bargaining chip to get Ukraine to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden, his Democratic rival in the 2020 election. Trump has been touting corruption claims against Biden and his son Hunter, who worked with the Ukrainian gas company while his father was U.S. Vice President.
I think, yes, Trump's methods were very questionable, and there was this kind of attempted blackmail of the Ukrainian leader, which is unacceptable. But on the other hand, the military aid itself should be questioned as to why it was being delivered in the first place. And withholding that aid doesn't affect U.S. national security in any way, because there's no threat to the United States coming from that region of the world.
The second article of impeachment charges Trump with obstruction of Congress as it tried to carry out its constitutional duty of impeaching the president for abuse of power. It involves defiance of subpoenas and orders by the president to his aides not to comply either. Democrats say that is an impeachable offense on its own. They've been pressing for witnesses and documents for the proceedings, accusing Republicans of engaging in cover-up. Why is Team Trump refusing to provide documents and witnesses for the trial? Do they perhaps know that the president is guilty?
Maybe a sign of guilt when people are not revealing the full extent of information or trying to hide things as a sign of their guilt. The same thing, though, happened with the Mueller investigation. And Trump was accosted for not cooperating with that investigation. But that investigation was also very politicized and didn't yield any concrete evidence of Trump's collusion with the Russians. So Trump is promoting the line that these impeachment proceedings like the Mueller investigation is part of this witch hunt, maybe a coup d'etat designed by his political enemies to oust him.
A new member of Trump's defense team, former Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz, argues that abuse of power is not an impeachable offense. Dershowitz's past clients include Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted sex offender who died in jail last year, and O.J. Simpson, a former football player accused of murdering his wife and friend.
Half of American
Democrats say the notion that a president cannot be removed for abusing his power makes impeachment worthless as a constitutional tool. President Trump's defense team has characterized the impeachment process as an unlawful power grab and a dangerous attack on the American people. Trump's lawyers have said the president was within his rights to ignore requests from Congress for witnesses and documents. Analysts say withholding aid to Ukraine for political advantage is just a minor offense when compared to other more serious abuses of power committed by Trump and other U.S. presidents.
Trump has committed many abuses of power. Unfortunately, so have other presidents. An example of that abuse of power, I think, is the drone war, like with this targeted assassination of Mr. Suleiman, without presenting any evidence that Mr. Suleiman had committed any crimes, and that this is creating escalated tensions with Iran and could lead to a war. The Obama administration, similarly, President Obama, it was reported in the New York Times, had a Tuesday meeting where he would meet with the CIA director and they would pick the targets for these assassinations, but they also would not present evidence to the public of any guilt.
Some say Trump's presidency and his legacy will forever be tainted by impeachment. Trump has long strived to make the name Trump synonymous with success, from his days as a real estate mogul to his time in the White House. That's probably why he ran for office in the first place. But now the name Trump is forever tarnished, regardless of the outcome of the Senate trial. Trump will forever be remembered as one of the only 3 infamous presidents who have been impeached. This might explain Trump's outbursts on Twitter, asking, how can they impeach a very successful president of the United States? How will Trump be remembered in history?
Trump is a very polarizing figure in American life. I think he'll be remembered for that, for polarizing the electorate. I think he's tapped into certain nativist impulses in American society, and he's scapegoated Mexicans, and he's drawn white supremacists. You know, he's enabled them to come more out in the open because of some of his rhetoric, which smacks of racism. And he's kind of part of a backlash against Obama, who's the first black president. And he's also, exemplifies, I think, a lot of the excesses of American capitalism, the flaunting of his wealth.